Welcome everyone to our webinar today on managing fears and uncertainty when it comes to transitioning careers. My name is Meredith. I am one of the career coaches for AMU APU. I'm actually one of the newer ones because I somewhat recently went through a career transition myself. And so that's one of the reasons I am here with you today. I have over 10 years with our federal government, mostly with supporting our public lands and education. And now I am with APUS. And so again, this presentation, we're going to be mostly focusing on the managing fears and uncertainty part of it. Like I said, this is being recorded, but you're welcome to use the chat. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Ray to introduce yourself and get us started today.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Meredith. And thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. We really wanted to put these webinars on to help do our part. I mean, we live here too. We're part of the community. We wanted to be able to reach out to everybody else as well, in addition to our students and alumni. I say alumni because, as a reminder to you students who don't know this, I see we already have a lot of alumni on this call, so they already know. But our alumni do have career services eligibility for life. So anything that we do, host, present, etc., that is available to our alumni as well. So when you complete a program here, you are an alum. And we are so glad to have you guys tuning in today. Thank you so much. As Meredith said, my name is Rachel. I am a Marine veteran. My husband retired out of the Marine Corps a couple of years now. It's been a few things have happened, so it's hard to keep track. You'd think I'd know, but yeah, COVID, COVID happened. I have been here with APUS for 11 years and 9 years as a career coach. I'm now a senior career coach. I coach our students, most of our students from the Security and Global Studies School. Those students, those programs that are in there, that is who I am the industry coach for. As Meredith said, she's joining me today. She's one of our newest coaches. She coaches a lot of our cybersecurity, our federal students. And again, I know we've got to have a lot of federal people in here. That's the idea behind this webinar. So thank you all so much for joining us today. So let's go ahead and get into why are we all here? Okay, brief overview of the agenda. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because Meredith and I have a lot of things we do want to cover with you all today. And also we do want to leave that space at the end for questions and answers and things like that. We will go ahead and we'll enable the microphones at the end. So if you want to ask your question verbally, we'll just ask you to raise your hand. If you want to put it in the chat, we will return back to the chat box questions later. Okay, Stacy is doing a great job of keeping up with that and answering some basic questions in there, but we do ask that you try to focus more on the presentation today and then return to that chat kind of towards the end as we're wrapping up. Okay. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm not going to read these. You guys can read. You're here for that. So I want to start with the neuroscience of change. Okay, I want us all to be on the same page to understand where are these emotions that I'm experiencing now? Where are they coming from? What is this experience in the brain? What is happening to me so I know what I can control, what I cannot control, what I can anticipate, and help react better in situations. And situations can be immediate or kind of over time, right? So I wanted to start off with the neuroscience of this because not everybody understands emotions, where they come from, how strong they can be, things of that nature. I am certified to present the EQI 2.0 emotional intelligence assessment. It's some training that I have been through. I've been into emotional intelligence, studying it for a very, very long time. Emotions are what we're talking about today for sure, right? Dealing with the anxiety, the pressure, the change. So I want you to understand first off the brain, okay? The limbic system is up underneath, okay? My arrow looks like it's pointing towards the back. I didn't want to get it all the way up under there, but your limbic system is up underneath. If this whole thing is your brain, that limbic system is kind of up in here, okay? It developed evolutionarily a long, long time ago. Okay, that's the old part of our brain. Okay, that's the paleo mammalian brain. Evolutionarily speaking, that stuff is first. Okay, that, as you can see here, that's your feeling brain. That's your emotions. That's where those sit. That's where your fight or flight is. That's where you're happy, you're sad, your reactions, your why did I react that way? That's in there. That's the brainstem, and it is very, very, very quick. And we're going to learn a little bit more about it. Okay. Conversely, evolutionarily speaking, the last place to develop is here, the prefrontal cortex. This is where you can think of as you. This is you. This is your conscious decisions. This is your working memory. This is where you are doing your thinking and your data pulling and your comparing things. You are present here. Your decisions, your control is here. Okay. The limbic system, like I said, is fast. It's faster than that prefrontal cortex. So when things come in, when information comes in, the reaction is from an emotional perspective first. Okay. And then when you are given time, however much time that is, and you work through the emotion and you think and you make the choices and everything, that's where you've moved it up into your prefrontal cortex, into your choices. I want to just read a really great, it's a great rendition of kind of what's happening as information comes in. It's a good explanation. So I want to read that to you guys really quick. So when faced with a threatening situation, so we're talking that fight or flight, we're talking kind of your situation now, right? You know, there's been a job loss or one's coming, or it could be. When faced with a threatening situation, our thalamus, which receives incoming stimuli, sends signals to both the amygdala and the cortex. If the amygdala senses danger, it makes a split-second decision and begins the fight or flight response before the cortex has time to overrule it. This cascade of events triggers the release of adrenaline, which leads to increased heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing. You may experience a racing heart, shaking, sweating, and nausea as this happens. In this way, the amygdala triggers a sudden and intense unconscious emotional response that shuts off the cortex, making it hard for you to think clearly about the situation. As your brain triggers the release of stress hormones such as cortisol, you find it increasingly hard to problem solve and concentrate. This whole process takes a toll, and you may not recover to your original level of functioning for several hours. Okay, so that's obviously like an intense, immediate, scary situation. That's how the brain is supposed to respond. But you're also doing that on micro levels, in micro responses to fear when it happens. Okay. So that's why I wanted to go into this all with you, because emotions are normal. Okay. Even the bad ones, there isn't a bad emotion. It's how you react to it. Okay. Emotions are normal. It's what you decide to do with that information that you can then make your choices and act. Okay. Continuing on with this, with the fight or flight, with the danger, with the what's happening in the brain, this creates uncertainty. You guys are feeling uncertain right now. Am I going to get this job? Am I going to get the next one? How do I pay my bills? Things like that. Uncertainty in evolution equals danger. Okay. So again, the brain is feeling threatened. Even if you right now, even if intellectually right now you go, well, I'm not currently under threat. I'm fine. I'm sitting in my house. I'm watching this webinar. Okay. The brain is still aware of uncertainty and it will impact your attention. Okay. Always, always, always. It's in there. It's being fed. It's your brain is constantly paying attention to uncertainty. It needs to resolve the uncertainty. The brain diverts the energy to resolving the uncertainty. I was reading an article not too long ago, and it was research done on primates by Columbia University's Zuckerman Institute. They were researching this uncertainty and what it does to the brain. And this uncertainty happens both at the micro level of individual cells trying to resolve it, but also the macro level of the brain, of the signals sent across the brain. So this is taking up a lot of your cognitive load, okay? Cognitive load, as you can see there, it reduces your working memory, okay? Your scratch pad, your thing where you are currently working. I'm thinking about this, I'm solving this. That is your working memory. Cognitive load, constantly having this thing sit back here and hum at you, it's taking your attention, whether you realize it or not. When these things keep happening, that creates stress, that creates anxiety, and obviously long-term stress, as we all know at this point in life, long-term stress can actually contribute to anxiety. You can have situational or you can have long-term anxiety, okay? So being able to resolve this uncertainty, to know where I'm moving forward to, this is going to help start that I feel like I'm now in control. Okay. So we've been talking about some fears and everything. These are some of the common fears that I have brought up for us to talk about today, or just consider. I'd like for you guys maybe to put some fears in the chat right now if you're willing to share it. Maybe some fears that you've been having since this has happened, some concerns, maybe a fear you heard from somebody else. What are some of these concerns that people are experiencing right now? You know, I have financial instability here because it was low-hanging fruit. Obviously, if you don't know what your financial situation is, that's going to be helpful. Okay, somebody is typing that they recently have been disabled. That's that's a huge fear. That's going to come with a lot of concerns and everything, and especially making a transition. And if you don't know how to look for work with those things in mind, that's a new set of questions and things. Imposter syndrome. Yes, we have that listed here, the imposter syndrome for sure. I'd be hard pressed, I think, to think of someone who hasn't felt it at one point in life or another. So I don't think we're necessarily going to go into imposter syndrome. But yeah, you know, just feeling like, oh, I don't, am I the one to be here or not? Right. You know, and then having to deal with that on top of, I already don't have a job. Where do I go? What do I look at? Um, a fear of transitioning to a new industry after 40. Yes, that's I transitioning to a new industry anyway, regardless of age, is, you know, yeah, that can be really intimidating, right? That can feel very large, but especially after you've spent many, many years in another field, you know, yeah, there's a lot of fears that you guys are sharing out here. Thank you so much. Um, Loss of identity as well. You know, a lot of people, um, may have a lot of their identity wrapped up in what they do, right? And that happens to a certain extent, like we're all on a continuum as far as that goes. Loss of identity can really impact your experience and can impact how you handle that stress and how you decide to move forward. In fact, Meredith, didn't you have a story you wanted to share from your transitioning experience, from your own work experience? I don't want to take any of your
Yeah.
thunder or anything, but yeah, let's hear it.
No, not and not like a full-on story, but like I said, I did transition from federal to what I'm doing now, which I love. But I had, and fortunately, like, and we'll recognize that some of you might be here because you're transitioning careers by choice. We do know that, like, we probably have both crowds, you know, maybe it was a forced thing, a loss of a job, but you might also be excited here. You're doing a transition by choice, and that was partially what I was going through. So I was very surprised after kind of being in between jobs for a while, even though it was by choice, that I was having those extreme feelings of like a loss of identity, kind of also like a loss of purpose. And so it's just something very that I think we all deal with when we are in this position, whether it is by choice or forced, or that you are kind of tied up in that and you have that purpose and things like that. So when you lose it, you suffer those feelings as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely something to consider. Maybe you yourself, you know, attendees, maybe you hadn't thought of that yet, you know. Definitely not here to invent new fears, but it's a good idea to understand what might be impacting you. You know, you may have been in a situation where you've been feeling a lot of emotions lately and you don't even know why. It's a good idea to kind of start figuring these things out, you know. Meredith, thank you for that. Um, yeah, let's keep going because again, I want to make sure we get all of our good information in here. Okay, so talking about emotions and emotional intelligence and things like that, sometimes what happens is, and everybody, again, you're on a spectrum, okay? Your ability at any given time to name an emotion, to recognize an emotion, to recognize that I am feeling this way. Some people struggle with that a little bit. Some people are much better at it, but all of us can get better if that is something that we want to put our minds to. Emotional intelligence is malleable. Okay. What are some anxiety or stress symptoms? I'd like you guys to put some in the chat. I have some written down. I can go through them, but anxiety, stress symptoms, be they physical or emotional or cognitive, what would you guys say to help your fellow webinar attendees? What would you say is a symptom, a sign of experiencing anxiety or stress? I'm gonna wait until people post things. Okay, panic attack. That is a huge one. Yes, rapid heart rate. Um, absolutely. Yes. Sweating, maybe palms sweating, exhaustion. Okay, exhaustion can be physical. That can also be cognitive. Cognitive exhaustion. We talked about that cognitive load and that worry, confusion, lack of sleep. Yeah, you guys are doing great. Yes, Um, avoiding problems and hobbies. That's true. Yes, people can do that as well. It's just avoidance for a while, just because you're just so overloaded and just what do you do? You know. So I wanted this up here. I wanted us talking about these things because I want us to recognize these different kinds of symptoms that can be happening just in case you weren't there yet. If you haven't figured, if you haven't figured that out in your own way, in how I personally show these things, are you feeling any of these? The absolute feeling of dread. It's very resounding. Okay. Yes, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. Short-term memory loss, yeah, it's yes, it can be impacted. And again, that cognitive load, right? That working memory, that short-term memory that we're paying attention to. So we're going to see that easier than we would see other sorts of things. So yeah, self-doubt, overwhelm, stress, trouble sleeping, muscle tension, cognitive, again, like it's yeah, cognitive diminishment, anger, okay? So maybe not being able to rein in those emotions when they do happen, or maybe experiencing that irritability or that anger more often than normal for you. Absolutely. Yes, if you're worried about things all the time, and your cognitive load is diminished, and we already know that we need we need our cognition to make sure that our behavior is still on track, regardless of the emotions that we might be feeling. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. A lot going on here. Okay, so thank you guys for sharing those so that we can help others to recognize their own symptoms of cognitive overload and stress and anxiety and things like that. I'm going to hand it off to Meredith now that we're talking about these sorts of things to take us through our next few points. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note, like, once we are starting to recognize, also just acknowledging that these feelings are a complete natural and part of the transition process that everyone is going through. I heard in a webinar recently that was on a similar topic to this, that it's similar to the stages of grief. And there's those changes that affect us externally, like whether or not we were let go from a job or we are a displaced federal employee, or even if it was by choice, there's that external piece. But then there's also the transition in our minds that, and in our heads and our hearts, that require actively managing just as much as the external environment. So again, even exciting new things, there can be conflicting emotions, and we can feel a loss associated with everything we're leaving behind, our old job, our coworkers, the comfort, the familiarity. And if we were let go not by choice, we have those additional feelings of lack of closure, resentment, anger, maybe. But the really important thing to remember is that we acknowledge this. It is a natural response, but we want to make sure we're ready to take steps to not let it paralyze us and just be stuck in these feelings and these the anxiety and the stress. So remembering that uncertainty is manageable. And we are gonna, like, from here, kind of the rest of the presentation, go into coping and steps to moving forward. And kind of remembering also that everyone's career path is different, and that's completely okay. So it's going to depend on you and your needs. And as we start to kind of self-assess, Ray mentioned financial needs. So kind of knowing where you are. Do you have time to maybe consider a career change, or a whole different field? Or do you need to pursue something immediate and have your immediate needs met right now, which is completely understandable as well? And not only normalizing fear, but I like the idea of like normalizing these transitions. There's this myth that we have to have this clear, perfect career trajectory where we're always moving forward. Every job is making more money, or it's a higher title, or it's always moving us up in our careers. But that doesn't have to be the case. Again, we all have our own stories, our own journeys. Like we've already mentioned a couple of times, I went through this transition not long ago, again, by choice, kind of to pursue like a personal life goal. But when it was time to re-enter the workforce, I did have to have some immediate needs met right away. And honestly, I went back to something that I knew I liked and that would have be easy to make some money quickly. And that was waitressing. So last summer, I spent my summer waitressing. And I know for some people, they would be like, wow, that's, you've had over 10 years of professional work. And that's embarrassing. That's a step back. But we have to normalize these things that it's not, it's your life. The next thing is, it might not be what you think, but it's always preparing you for what's next. It's always giving you transferables, it's giving you skills. And while I did want to move forward, that was a temporary thing. Even if I hadn't, that would have been okay too. Everyone's life, everyone's career is different. I personally kind of like to think of the career trajectory as like a hike because I love the outdoors. And instead of picturing as being this like straight up thing where we have to get to the top, you don't want that journey. That is a painful journey. You want the switchbacks, maybe you even want that loop trail. Maybe you want it to feel like you're kind of going backwards sometimes on those trails, and that's completely okay. Ray, you've told me once another analogy of career trajectory. What does yours look like?
So my analogy that I always use with people to help you feel better about, because this comes up a lot. So not just in the situations that we're kind of trying to address today, but within career coaching, fear is definitely something we want to talk about. Concerns, anxiety, things like that. It is very, very common for we Americans to, like Meredith is saying, that ladder, right? That trajectory straight up. It's got to go up and up and up and up. That is very common. It's also a very common misconception that we graduate high school, we pick the thing we're going to be, and we're going to be that for 80 years. No,
Mhm.
no, oh my gosh, no. Okay, you can step outside of what your normal everyday day-to-day job is, go do something else for a little while. Maybe something completely different, maybe something related. It doesn't matter because, as Meredith said, every job is going to bring in transferable skills and experience. It's still time on your resume. It's growing that network, all those things. But I know, Meredith, you just asked me for my thing, and I'm soapboxing. I like to say, think of it as a mosaic. Okay, so busted up little pieces of tile all glued back together in this really artistic, beautiful way, right? This tile was, I went and did an internship at a music school or something. This tile is, and then I went into corporate recruiting, all of these different things that you can put together into something that is either completely related to a thing you want to do, semi-related, but again, it doesn't have to be a straight line. You don't have to stay in the same thing all the time. Maybe you do spend some time doing a for now job. It's possible. So the mosaic, that's how I like to put it. Sorry, Meredith, didn't mean to steal your
Oh,
microphone there.
that was exactly
Yeah.
exactly what I'm pulling you in for.
Awesome. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so now that, we're normalizing the fear, we're normalizing these transitions. Let's go back to kind of coping with some of those stress and anxiety symptoms. And so we do have mechanisms. And again, this kind of going to be like what Ray said before. Yes, we all probably recognize these. Drop in the chat what helps you, what you have found that has helped you, because that will help each other as we see each other as what's helped us through our own transitions. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but it's not so much just recognizing them for what they are, but being purposeful, because all of us know, yes, hobbies are great. Yes, exercise is great. But if we are not setting aside the time, if we are not making ourselves do these things, because yes, it can be hard, especially when we are facing the stress and the anxiety to get off the couch and to go for a walk. But that one for me, especially getting outside, exercise, I know there's been so many times where I have regretted not doing it, but I've never regretted doing it because it always makes me feel better getting out in nature. Mindfulness, just taking a time to breathe sometimes is the biggest one. When you start feeling that anxiety, the overwhelming, and you just start scrolling more on your phone or jumping from task to task, is just making that conscious effort to take the moment to breathe, to reevaluate. Meditation, there's so many apps out there that can help us, and social support networks. So again, when these things are going on, that can be when we start to pull away, but it's probably when we need our networks more than ever. Family, friends, mentors, groups like below. You see we have our Be Well group. That's a newer group for our APUS students and faculty and teachers, everyone, the staff. So this is actually something we do together. It's a health and wellness accountability group. Stacy's going to drop the link in there. Access it through CareerLink, but that's just one example of groups that you can be involved in. So yeah, if you do have other ways that you deal with stress, please continue adding them.
Mhm.
Oh, meditation
Yeah.
music. I love
I
that.
know. Yeah. People are, that's over
Volunteering.
here nodding
Yes.
because, yeah.
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 Yes. Volunteering. That is a huge one because it's a great way to both help with our own negative feelings because we get out, we're helping others potentially, we're building our skill sets, preparing for a new job. But we're also getting in those networking opportunities. And I love that it can show potential future employers your passion and your interest in your community. That's huge. It goes on your
Mhm.
resume.
Mhm.
And if they ask that question, so what have you been doing since this previous job? You have those examples of your volunteer time.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Any others that I'm missing in here? Oh, quiet. Yeah. Quiet time, relaxing.
Yeah.
Walks, yeah. Time with your pets, yes.
Absolutely. Yes. For me, it's karate. So sports, hobby, things, for me, it's the camaraderie of going somewhere and there's a whole other group of people that aren't in my life except for that reason for karate. And yeah, sometimes just punching a bag feels like that's just what you need at the end of the day. So that's my 2 cents is karate.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing. That was great. And
Hmm.
I didn't say at the beginning, but I was going to mention too, again, it's a process. So while we do want to do all of these things, it's okay to take the time to um
Hmm.
to to be in that space of grief, to eat that pint of ice cream while you're binging your favorite show and snuggling your pets and your loved ones. And that is completely okay. But taking these steps, being purposeful, and incorporating these into your day as well. And we'll kind of touch on them more later. But yeah, we also want to mention some of the resources that are available to you through the university. I know most of you are students here today, so if you are not one of our students, if you're from the public, keep in mind most of these mental health resources, these types of things are available through most universities. So you can go to your own previous school as well, reach out to the career services or look at the website, because those are most likely available to you too as well through your own university. But for our ANU APU students, again, Stacy's probably dropping that link. We have so many included mental health resources. These are 3 of the main ones. That site will give you even more. We have our chaplain, and we reached out to her. Actually, there's 2 of them, but Reverend Dr. Cynthia Lindenmeyer was the one who responded when I said, any advice that you want to or add on to our presentation today? And she just reiterated again that if you can dismiss fear, then life has new meaning, and always believe in the best. So our chaplains are great for when you're feeling emotionally challenged over a current life or academic situation and kind of just need a safe person to listen. No judgment, no like specific religious affiliation or anything. So they are amazing for reaching out and responding almost immediately usually. But we also have You Will for a certain amount of free teletherapy sessions. They're going to match you with licensed professionals based on your unique needs, interests, goals, and where you're located. And then if you haven't heard of Talk Campus, that's really cool too, because that's more of a peer support network with students around the country. And within there too, what it doesn't mention on there is that there's a lot of other features through the platform, including what we're talking about, kind of these different resources like tracking your mood and journaling, self-directed learning modules, and even volunteering opportunities. So I hope some of you have utilized some of these in the past or are now aware of them. But again, I did also want to mention for those of you who potentially are one of our displaced federal employees or have that fear of that happening, there are resources out there as well. One of the big ones is Fed Support. Stacy will get those links out too. This is an organization, a nonprofit that has provided so much information and resources, support for those displaced federal employees who are going through that. Webinars you can go back and watch. They're putting on a free boot camp as well as a career fair coming up as well. And one other is worth mentioning that I found while we were looking is Career One Stop. You might be familiar with that from the Department of Labor. There are lots of self-assessments on there as you're kind of making these transitions, maybe thinking about different roles, but also additional even mental health and other wellness resources on that site as well. All right, so as we continue moving forward and embracing that change, Ray is gonna take it back over.
Yep, we're going to talk about embracing growth. But before I move on, I also wanted to call out for those of you who are not our students or alumni. Meredith did also share down there the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's available 24/7 by dialing 988. Veterans, military members, it will prompt you to press 1 when you dial it for specific veteran resources. Okay. All right, embracing growth. So, as Meredith said, as I covered with the emotions and things like that, things are changing. You know that, and but that's okay. All right. It is okay to change. It is important to embrace opportunities when change is happening. Okay. I know we're all on a spectrum as far as liking change, being able to deal with change, and we're going to say sometimes it depends on the change. Okay. Embracing growth and being able to better navigate through changes is going to help you now, but it's also a life skill. It's really important that you are aware that things can change. People sometimes think something like intelligence cannot change. You can grow your intelligence. I mean, maybe you can't go from like 100 to 140 immediately, but you can grow your intelligence. Okay. Those things can change. Emotional intelligence, absolutely. Okay. The skills and abilities that you already have, you can get better. You can get new ones. You can get specialized ones. So this is basically my call to action, that I don't want you to sit fixed. Okay. I don't want you to think, well, here's what I have to offer and this is all I've got, and there's nothing out there and I'm not finding anything. You can change up the way you're presenting things. You can emphasize different things. You can pursue new avenues. As Meredith suggested, there's the volunteering, there's certificates, there's all sorts of things that you can pursue that can help you progress in those goals. So I just want each of you to remember that everything changes, including you. You can do this. You can make those changes. It may be one at a time, it may be a couple at a time, but you can navigate a change. Continuous learning is going to be very, very important throughout this process. And that could be, yes, education, formal education, but it could be doing the research. Okay, working with career coaches, we're going to tell you the research. We're going to tell you how to find out what you want to know. Absolutely. Because the more you know, the more informed you are, the faster you can make decisions, the quicker you can pivot, the quicker you can jump on things. So please just keep in mind that who you are today and what you have to offer is not it. You do have so much more, I promise. You have more to offer than you are thinking of. I have this conversation with my students all the time. When we're doing resumes and things like that, oftentimes people will sell themselves short because to you, that duty that you did, that responsibility or that achievement you had, that was Tuesday. We do that every Tuesday. From an employer's perspective, though, absolutely not. That could be really cool. That could be really instrumental. Okay. So be aware of opportunities to change your mindset, change your viewpoint, change your perspective, and to get more of a skill or training or research or something like that. Um, is that flowing okay? You got that, Meredith? You're following along and everything. Want to make sure that's good to go. Um, I feel like I'm spending this whole time getting on soapboxes, but you guys, I want these things to be successful for you. I want you to know that you have resources, you have people here who genuinely care, and we want to support you through these. Um, so yeah, thank you for being here and definitely reach out to us and we'll do all that towards the end, okay? So kind of with what are we doing next? What are we looking at next? How do I start moving forward, right? With the employment part. We talked about self-care, we talked about meditation, we talked about recognizing those things so that you can deal with yourself as you are going through this, okay? And the things we're talking about, this isn't okay, do this in the beginning and then stop. Don't do them again now that you're on working with resumes and stuff. Absolutely not. All of this is going to be all the way through, all of these emotions, all of this self-care, all the way through. So how do you kind of start changing your perspective? How do you start going, yes, I am the bad A I know myself to be, okay? We need to get back in touch with that and remember that. I want you to look at your past successes, okay? These can be personal, but obviously professional. That's what we're looking at. What were some of your past successes? And I mean, like, don't just list them. Yes, list them somewhere, but right now, like, name one and think about it. What happened? Who was involved? What did I do? Who did this? Who did that? Why was it successful? Is that something that I can articulate in a resume? Is that something I can repeat in a new job opportunity? Why was that a success? What did I do to make that a success? And then just sit with it for a minute also and just remember I was successful there and that was cool. Go me. Okay. You need to remember that you can do this. You need to celebrate your successes, the tiny ones and the huge ones and all the ones in between. Because if you don't stop to do that, you don't get the reward. You don't get the dopamine. And brains, no matter who you are, dopamine. Okay. What were those successes? Who came to you? What do people typically come to you for, no matter what your role is? Do people come to you for problem solving? Do they come to you for ideas? Do they come to you for motivation? Okay, so think about that. Are there some themes there? Um, did you receive any praise after these things happened? Or, something totally different. What is some praise you've received? What for? Specifically, the behaviors, your person, what happened? What are you receiving praise for? What can you do with that in the future? Can you make that into something? Okay. And again, This is heart pocket stuff. This is what I call it. When you get a good compliment and it makes you feel good, you tuck it up and you put it in your heart pocket so you can pull it out and think about it every now and then, right? Again, it is important to pay attention to me in here. You need to pay attention to yourself, okay, and what you need and things like that. So that's a way to also just kind of revisit the warm and fuzzies, the positives, if you will, when you are having those moments of uncertainty. Look for some common themes. Look at strengths in your previous history. What are you always really good at? What does your team come to you for? That could be an indicator of maybe a pivot. That could be an indicator of maybe just a different employer. Okay, there are ways to come up with more ideas, but we want to look at our past and look at what fed me. And I don't mean like monetarily. I mean like what what do I want to do? Sometimes this can be an opportunity to make that change you were always scared to make. Okay, maybe today's the day. Um, Meredith mentioned the careeronestop.org for assessments. So maybe you're just sitting here going, okay, I've been totally thrown for a loop. The rug's been pulled out from underneath me. I'm not good at anything. I don't care about anything. I don't like anything. Those assessments can also help with that. And there are other assessments to take as well. Again, reach out to some career professionals for those things. All right. Support system, again, super, super important. We've talked about this throughout. Support system, whoever, however many people that is for you, it is important to have a support system as you navigate changes and uncertainty. 100%. Okay. Meredith, why don't you take it back over there, continue on with what we're doing and like we're actively doing. What are our how do we oh, I skipped. Hold on. There we go. Effective yeah, the
Yeah.
thing went way forward. So there you go. Okay.
Yeah, and we won't spend too much time on these last few slides because again, we have 2 more sessions of this, and that's going to get more into the nitty-gritty of applying for jobs, your transitioning your skills, your transferables, things like that. But we did kind of want to get started on it and kind of touch on it because starting to apply for the jobs and going through that process is a part of the fears and uncertainties, and it can be really overwhelming. So without some sort of routine, a daily structure to build consistency and kind of prevent that procrastination, it gets too overwhelming and we get a little lost. Again, I face that myself. I keep using myself as example because it's recent and because I get it. When I was going through that transition not long ago at the beginning, I didn't really have any sort of plan. So maybe some of you are similar where my days looked like getting up early in the morning and immediately like looking through all the job boards, looking at all the jobs and kind of picking quite a few that I was even sounded a little bit interesting, and then immediately like kind of rushing to apply without fully tailoring my resume, my cover letters, and then spending the rest of the day just like hitting refresh again and again. Are there more? Are there more? So complete waste of time in a way because I wasn't actually applying for the jobs I was most interested in and probably wouldn't even end up wanting to do in the long run. And in that way, I was wasting time and taking away from the time to make sure that my application materials for the jobs that I really did want were looking their best. So we do want to make sure that we're creating that daily structure. That can look like time blocking. There's methods or tools like your Google Calendar or kind of visually structuring your day to block off specific time blocks for different tasks, like tailoring your resume, like researching companies. We want to make sure we're treating job hunting like a part-time job and not making it become our whole lives and taking over. Again, that's where also those coping mechanisms come in, bringing in those daily parts of our lives that bring us joy and give us those breaks. We're going to show a couple quick examples of some tools we can use to help us prioritize tasks. That is going to help us, make sure that we are applying for high fit job first and saving exploratory research for later type of things. And then it's also really important to track our progress so that we can then evaluate and adjust. And when I say track our progress, this can just look like an Excel sheet. It can be your personal journal, but it helps us to track the applications we send out so we know when to follow up, the interviews we've scheduled, any new skills we've learned or contacts made on LinkedIn or CareerLink, things like that, so that we can then go back and evaluate and adjust. Maybe our applications aren't getting many responses, so we shift our time to networking for a while. Or we decide to send in our resume to our career coach to make sure that there's no red flags or anything sticking out, and that's what the holdup is. So one of the two tools is setting expectations and goals, but being very smart about it. And Ray, you can go ahead now. And when we say smart, I'm sure you have seen the title before, setting goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. But again, this is all about being purposeful, because I think it was just yesterday or the day before, Ray and I were saying, we see this all the time, but how often have we actually put it into effect into our own lives? We know it's useful, we know it can be great, but I really encourage you to use tools like this to sit down and take those goals, take those next steps that you are making in your job application process, in your career transition, and breaking them down. Because a large goal like I need to find a new job is way too overwhelming, and it's not going to be super helpful. You're going to become like me, scrolling through the jobs every day and hitting refresh constantly. Instead, we can break them down. You can see the example there about like tailoring a resume and cover letter. You can see that it's specific when we mention aligning it with skills for each job requirement, how much time we're going to spend on it, and how we're going to track it, makes it measurable and achievable. And then it even specifically says 5 applications over the next 4 weeks. Again, this is just an example. Yours might look different, but you can do this for each step of the job search. You can say how much time you want to spend on researching new companies, or setting aside time to be on LinkedIn or CareerLink to make those new connections. And it just lets us take those broader goals and bring them down into those more actionable, easy steps to take. One other tool we have, and yeah, this is the Eisenhower matrix. Some of you may have seen this before. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's something you can easily look up. You can find some blank templates of it online to use yourself. But basically, it's a way of maybe starting our week out, starting our month out, and listing all your tasks that you want to accomplish when it comes to applying for jobs, making that transition, and then breaking them down to what's most urgent and what's most important, so that you can kind of schedule out or set aside the ones that aren't, or even some of them, let them go completely. So you can see some of the examples here, but when we start with like most urgent and important, this can deal with, what's happening today. There's a job I found and the application's due today. Okay, now I know what I'm doing today. Whereas things like if you have an interview in 2 weeks, yes, practicing your interview questions are extremely important, but that's something you can schedule out. Maybe you can say, okay, I'm going to do this a little later in the week because it's not as urgent. I have that interview next week. Urgent but not important. So it might feel urgent to constantly check your email or your stats from job applications platforms. And in a way, it is urgent because you want to make sure you're getting those updates. But doing it constantly and not simplifying it and just giving that allotted time can really take away from our time and our efforts for the job application process. And the same goes for social media and forum browsing. This can even be, again, like LinkedIn and things. Yes, they can be important. They even can be urgent, but we don't want that endless, unrelated browsing, the endless just scrolling through or watching things that aren't really helping us build the necessary relevant skills. So those are just 2 tools to just kind of keep in mind. But I'm gonna let you explore those more on your own so that we can continue. And finally, just kind of wrapping up, staying motivated. And when we think about, the jobs that we're applying for, one of the big things is learning from our feedback. So constructive rejection, that can be difficult at first, but it's great to to view rejection as kind of part of the process rather than a personal failure. These are ways that we can continue learning and then taking what we've learned to apply and make adjustments for our future applications and our future goals. And Ray kind of already touched on this, but celebrating those small wins. So when it comes to applying for jobs too, you don't want it to all be just about landing that job. Taking that time to celebrate, I got the interview, or I made a new connection, I tailored my resume really well for this one, things like that. And I also like the idea of practicing patience and self-compassion as we wrap up here. Give yourself grace, just as you would if a close friend or a family member lost their job or is going through a transition like this. We're the hardest on ourselves. So think about if someone you loved was going through this, you wouldn't be hard on them. You would be supportive, you would be loving, patient, and showing that compassion. So give that to yourself as well. Remember, you're capable, you're resilient, and we are here for you. So our next slide, our closing slide kind of is just a reminder of everything that Career Services offers. I know some of it's been mentioned, some of it's even been dropped in the chat. There's so many resources for you, for our APU, our AMU students, as far as coaching, reviewing resumes. We have CareerLink, which some of you probably got through the webinar from there today. Others of you may not be familiar, but lots of resources. We do webinars and coaching like this regularly, so please consider signing up for future events. We have Hiration for your resumes, and we would love to meet with you one-on-one. That's part of what we do. And again, these services are available for life once you're a student alumni at no additional charge. So I'll let Ray add anything on there and kind of wrap us up.
Yes, absolutely. So this is our last slide for the day. I can see Stacy is in the chat. She's putting reposting those links that she shared earlier for the next 2 series that Meredith has mentioned a couple of different times now. Those links are in the chat for you guys to go ahead and register for. Again, as a reminder, that is transitioning experience to a new field and bouncing back from being laid off. Both of these will be the following next 2 Tuesdays. They will be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, so those are being shared in the chat. I wanted to take this opportunity and see, do we have any questions that we may be able to answer about what we went over today? Okay, if you've been paying attention in the chat, you may have seen people being invited to reach out to us for a more in-depth coaching. That's because, your privacy and your specific situation, we don't need to have it in front of everybody. Okay, so if it seems like whatever your question is that you may be asking us today might lead us into something like that, just be prepared that we're here for you outside of the webinar, and it might be a better situation for you. Okay. If anybody has any questions, can you go ahead and either put that in the chat, or can you raise your hand and we can take you off mute and you can just straight up ask. Meredith, can you go ahead and stop that recording as well? I think we're ready for that to happen.